Okay, let's slow down a little bit and let's take a more detailed look at the sketching environment. So again, I'm going to choose my sketch icon and which plane I want to work on. Now here's your 0, 0 point, and it's good practice to kind of keep things around this point, especially if you have parts that are symmetrical. And so for example, here I'm going to use a centered rectangle, pick that placement origin, and just kind of drag out. Now you can see here that it's giving me an approximate size. I can key in a specific dimension, so let's say 2, and if I hit tab it takes me to the next number. I can type 6, hit tab again, and then we'll choose enter. Now this did a couple things for me. Number one, it created the rectangle, and number two, it added the dimensions for me automatically. And so that's kind of nice, especially if you want to go back in and make a change to these later. Now, let's create another rectangle here, for example, and we'll just do another centered rectangle, and we're going to just sketch it out approximately the size we want, and just click and accept that. In this case, it did not create any dimensions for me, but I can certainly add them in after the fact. So for example, I can come in here and say sketch dimension, pick my entities, I'll just choose enter, enter, or you could hit D on your keyboard for dimension, and then you could of course put in an angular dimension here if you wanted. So Fusion is pretty smart about what you select in terms of what you want to dimension. So for example, if we hit D and we pick this line and this line, it's going to assume I want an angular dimension in there, and just dragging out different angles here will choose how it places that. Now one of the things that is really nice in Fusion as well is, let's say I want this dimension to be equal to this one. I can double click on that. I can then choose this 7 dimension here, hit enter, and now they're the same. Because I'm working parametrically, this is free to float. I haven't kind of locked this one down here. I locked this sketch down by placing it at the 0 point here. So if I try to drag this around, I can't drag it. I can't drag this line up either, because this dimension here is really controlling that. If I delete that dimension, now I'm free to pull this in that direction. Okay, but I didn't really want that. I want to keep that in place, so we'll just undo that. Now this sketch palette here is also pretty valuable. Let's say I wanted this line here and this line here to be lined up. So one of the things I can do here is choose from my options here, and so we can use Collinear. I'll choose this line and this line, and you can see now those objects are lined up collinearly. And so as I make changes, those will always stay aligned to each other. Now this sketch is still free to move up and down because I haven't placed it, I haven't controlled how far apart that might be. So we'll choose D for distance or dimension, and we'll place a dimension in there to lock that down. Okay, so now my sketch is kind of locked down. I really can't do much with it. Other than change the actual dimension value. So I can change this to be 5 and have everything is updating accordingly the way I would expect. So let's just draw some more geometry here. So let's say you make a mistake while sketching. You wanted this to be 90 degrees, but you were zoomed out too far. It looked like it was 90. A couple ways to correct that. You can delete it and redo it, or we can use our sketch palette down here to correct that problem. So you can see here we have a perpendicular choice. We can make that perpendicular. We can then hit L on our keyboard for line and close this up. So a couple things inside of Sketch that you might use quite often. One of them might be offset. We choose this closed loop here, and we can drag out the size that we want. A negative will take it inside, a positive will take it outside. And again, if I type this in and hit tab and then hit enter, it's going to create that dimension for me. If you take a look at, if we right mouse click, I can say repeat offset and do that again. And if we just kind of take a look at our palette here of choices, we can, chain the selection. We can flip the side here in this palette as well. So you have different choices here. So pay attention to your palettes because there's often a lot of extra choices here you can choose from. Now let's say, for example, I wanted to mirror this across to the other side in this sketch. I need to have a mirror line. It looks like I might have a line here, but that's actually the axis that I have. So one of the things I could do is just create a line. That's one option. Just going to drag that up, and now I have a line that's created that's kind of locked onto that plane. I'm going to undo that. Or what I might do is kind of project one of those planes to actually have it create a line. So I could choose this project option, and I can choose, if I turn on the origin here, we can see that we have the origin. And if I choose this line here, I get kind of a temporary line. So that's another way to create something that's locked into that original origin. I can hit OK and accept that. Most times it's best to just create a line here and drop it up. Now this line can't move left or right because I locked it into this center 0, 0 point when I did this sketch initially. So you need to be careful about that. Now this line is an object line. It can stay that way, or you can change it. I can change it to be a construction line so that it looks dashed like these other ones here, just by choosing this option here. I can select the line, do a right mouse click and go normal and switch it back. Right mouse click to make it a construction, or I can select it, hit the X key on my keyboard, and that'll change it to a construction line. Now I'm ready to mirror. So here we're going to, under our sketch menu, since we're still in the sketch, we want to mirror. And we'll just drag this across, select our mirror plane, OK, and now I have my mirrored elements. And so now, of course, as I change one side, the other side's going to change to reflect that. Now this is a fairly busy sketch. I'm going to talk about in the next lesson why creating a sketch this busy is not a good idea. But this shows you some of the basics of sketching that you'll need as you work through your modeling projects. We'll exit out of our sketch, and now we're ready to proceed to turn this into a 3D model.